Howdy, cadre. Um, we had. All right, we're recording. We had technological problems. That's for darn sure. I can show you. That wasn't even what we were working on. We were. Yeah, if you're coming in from the last episode, which I guess is Greenfield 56. I still need to figure out a title. We were still working on this map, and in fact, I made two videos, I think, that failed. Something went wrong in the middle of the last video you saw. In fact, you might not have heard my regular sign-off, I would guess. I think we're going out. I think we're going out. Okay, a little bit of combat here. Alright. Yeah, so in the middle of making this southwest map, my recording software wigged out. It like locked up. And 10 or 15 years ago, most software, if it failed, it would corrupt the file. Like the file wouldn't resolve properly. Whoop. What? Alright, and this thing is... Okay, so the keys are down here? Yes, alright. See, that's what's weird. I always assumed that this sign would be pointing north. Or that I'd be pointing north when looking at it. So I kept getting myself disoriented by that. I also thought that these roads were north of it, but I guess they're south and east. I haven't paid close enough attention, obviously, but okay, and it's down there, but this island, alright, extends south a little bit, and then there's the keys. Alright, anyways, so now there's a whole bunch of my landlord narrative, or property dispute narrative that has been lost. I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have muted my mic. I didn't get to it. Yeah, so southwest is the piers, it appears. And okay. And I even started northwest, as you can see from this map. Why is there a button there? It's just a decoration, I guess. Ashfield West. I feel like maybe I've been to Ashfield, but let's get there and we'll try and talk. So yeah, I had talked a lot about my landlord when apparently I wasn't recording. Oh, and I was starting to say that it used to be if the recording of a file didn't resolve properly, in the past, it would corrupt the whole file and you'd just lose it. Oh, I'm way west. So I guess I want to head east. And I am grateful that if you tuned in for the last episode, Greenfield 56, it does appear, I mean, maybe it won't upload or transfer properly. That's possible, but it is acting funny. When I open it with Windows Media Player, I can't jump ahead. I can't like click on the time bar, and it may be that it's just the time bar or the tracking or the I'm not sure what to call it, the demarcation of the times, kind of like a measuring stick. Like it may be that didn't resolve. Oh, should I grab? I brought bread. I could probably grab some food though. Do hoes pick that up easy? Oh yeah, that's just what hoes do now. Alright, so I'll grab bits of that for a nice food source. I don't normally like leaving holes. Well, I could fill them. Don't think I need gravel. The problem with holes is you just can't see how deep they are very easily. Which in this situation isn't likely to cause a problem. Anyways, wow, there's more city to the south. Guess I'll just swim. So anyways, I think, yeah, as I was trying to say, in the past, a lot of software would just make the file would fail if a problem occurred during it. But I think they've improved how the software works so that, like, most of the important, the fundamental data is at the beginning when the file's created, and then as it kind of paces out, the actual recording, it functions more like tape used to, that you're laying down the data. Well, I guess I should just get through this. You're laying down the data as you go, and they aren't relying as much on a resolution at the end, like a file close process at the end of the data. That's my guess. I don't do software really. I'm not a. I mean, I've certainly taken programming classes in the past, but I've never been. Yeah, and I taught myself the basics of HTML programming, and I've done stuff for classes in BASIC and some other programs. But anyways, my point being, I'm not a programmer. It doesn't interest me too much. So I'm speaking generally about how I think software works, but I should probably sleep. Anyways, point being that I'm gonna fall off, aren't I? Yep. Thank you. I think the file's fine, so I think you're going to be able to see 56. If this is 56, then the last one didn't upload properly. The last Greenfield. Ooh, I got an apple. This is a huge city, man. I am lost in the suburbs now. I guess I keep going for a while. And boy, they don't make a mow back here. How do I guess I just want to take one chunk of that off. And I guess I have some bricks now. I'll put it back. I don't want to fill up my pack. What? A painting? Oh, this is graffiti. Whoa. Alright, I'll put it back. I don't know what it looks like before, but it looks like that now. I can graffiti too. I can street art. This looks familiar. Lucky? Maybe not. Somewhere there's an orange box waiting for us. Lost and alone. Alright, it looks like we got a bus station here. That's nice. I don't know how the buses work when the city's abandoned, but we've up where we want. Alright, so yeah, I probably did an hour and a half or 2 hours of talking about my property dispute. Yeah, I'm getting the edge of the map this way, aren't I? Maybe not quite. Okay. So now, yeah, and I was already, like, tired of it. I guess I'll go through the house. And so yeah, my conundrum now is, do I continue my story? I think that's what I'm doing, because that's why I'm still in Greenfield. Again, I was hoping to resolve the story so that I could kind of put it to bed and well, this isn't going well. There we go. And then move on to Infinite. But there's pros and cons there, like talking about it does allow me to reprocess it in different parts of my brain. They keep doing this. stuff in the way. Okay. And so in a way it's a good tool for my own psychology and mental state. I'm trying to make a decision about whether I want to fight an eviction or just move out, and what the ramifications are, the different choices. And the main thing is, this whole thing is a process of me embracing my own power over my life and my freedom to make my own choices. And I tend to be generally very cautious and risk averse and focused on avoiding conflict. But in the last 10 years, I've learned that there are some conflicts that are important, even if you don't, like, get a win, per se. They can still be important for character development and for self-worth. That, like, I need to choose who I'm gonna be in the world. And so if I allow other people's choices to determine my actions, I'm kind of, just a puppet to other forces. So to get back into the narrative, the reason this looks familiar is it pretty closely matches up with this southwest portion. Yeah, and I'm calling this the northwest, but it looks like the city continues north from here more than south from here. Although I could compare it to the warp room. Anyways, so let's continue the narrative, and this is going to frustrate me because I've already been through this a couple times in videos, but maybe it'll go smoother now since I'm retelling it, and maybe I can knock it out faster. I'm sorry you missed the creation of the rest of this map. But yeah, if I can share this narrative even quicker now, maybe it's all worth it. So I think roughly where I left off was I think I had covered the fact that, all right, brief review. My landlord about 10 years ago said that he was giving a lot of the responsibilities of managing the property to his son, who I probably will just be referring to as the son. And if I say the father or the landlord, you know that I'm talking about the guy who I signed a contract with 14 years ago, who under the law is responsible. Even if his son did have a subcontract with him, or well, I guess technically I should say, even if his son was a subcontractor who had signed a contract to manage this property, the responsibility still lies with the property owner and the person who drafted and signed the lease. Like, if he wanted to truly shift responsibility, he'd probably have to sign the property over to his son, and or have me sign a new contract that involved how his son was going to be involved, all that stuff. Anyways, so about 10 years ago, he shifted responsibility to his son. And his son and I, developed a pretty casual relationship where we would text about things that needed to be done. And he would say he'd get to them, ignore them for weeks and months. And where I really got frustrated was when I was making a simple request for a light bulb in the laundry room to be changed, and he just kept ignoring my requests month after month for a full year. And finally, the way I resolved it is when they had a handyman that worked for them, again, I think kind of unofficially, probably off the books and casually. He was doing some unrelated repairs in the basement, and I complained to him about how my simple request had been ignored for a year to replace a fluorescent bulb in a fixture that was making it flicker and be at low light levels, and I kept banging my head on a pipe. Anyways, made the laundry room just feel really dark and dingy, and I know it was against Michigan state law. So he said, well, I could just replace that. This is a handyman that carries a truck, a pickup truck full of like parts and tools and stuff. He said, well, I could just replace that quick with a normal bulb, and then it would be easier to change, and I could get it bright again here in like with 15 minutes of work or whatever. And so without involving the landlord or the son, I just casually said, well, yeah, it'd work for me. And he immediately took out the fluorescent fixture, probably threw it in the back of his truck. He could use it elsewhere later if he wanted to. He just needed to replace one of the bulbs to get it back to, normal brightness. And that was really why I never dealt with it myself, because I didn't want to take the time to remove a bulb, take it to a hardware store, find the appropriate replacement bulb, pay for it, save the receipt, bring it back, replace the bulb, dispose of the bad bulb, which I don't think they're supposed to just go into trash cans. I'd have to look that up. Anyways, and moreover, I tend to be an idealist in a lot of ways, and not my job, not my responsibility, not my monkeys, not my circus. Yeah. And it kind of bugged me on an conceptual or idealistic level that, oh, there's a fake or frozen guy. Do I need armor? I don't have much space. I like the idea of grabbing some gold armor, but I've got gold. Anyways, so yeah. Light bulb resolved, but that certainly shook my faith in the system. Like, how is the system supposed to work? if I'm providing, text messages are in writing, they're electronic writing, but I'm providing a written request for repairs to be made that they are statutorily obligated. That's clearly their responsibility under Michigan state law, and they just ignore it for a year. And now that I've looked more at how the law works, I could have also informed the city of the repair that needed to be made and the date that I requested the maintenance. And then after 30 days, the city of Ann Arbor would have enforced it. They would have followed up with the landlord, made sure the repair had been made, and if it hadn't, they would start fining him. And it's probably an escalating, if they ignored it for 2 months, they'd get fined double again, tripling their cost for negligence. And, eventually it might ramp up to more serious repercussions. I don't know what. I doubt it would ever involve jail time, but they'd keep adding fines. And who knows, eventually they could seize the property, potentially. I didn't look that far into the law, but my point is that it never should have gone a year. And I know what my landlord would say. He's said this in the past. Well, if it was me, I would have just replaced the bulb myself. I think he said that about this specific incident once I talked to him. And I didn't think about it till later, but dude, it was you. It was your responsibility. The fact that you asked your son to take on your responsibilities does not mean that they legally are his responsibility, nor does it mean that he's actually taking them on. If he's irresponsible, then no one is being responsibility for your responsibilities, Mr. Landlord. So, yeah, once I thought through all that and realized that, what they're doing is playing a game of irresponsibility and shifting of labor. And the whole point is that they want to do the bare minimum to get the most value out of this investment. And that's where you start pushing into slumlord territory. It's a cash cow. They already spent the money on the property, so they expect to just sit back and rake in the benefits, while their customers, the tenants that live on their property, deal with the disrepair, neglect, poor maintenance. So he has made me feel unsafe, uncomfortable, insecure. I mean, I've had things stolen, and anyways, and at risk. He's put my health at risk, because the big triggering event was the mold bloom. I discovered that there were items that had been stored in the basement since I moved in that may have been his son's when he lived there, or may have been abandoned by a tenant. But the fact is, they left abandoned items in the basement that included cardboard boxes of clothing and other items, a mattress and box springs, a big wooden table and some other furniture, and a box of furnace filters. And in this back room, kind of a storage room, I just stepped back there one day when I was in the basement doing laundry. I discovered mold all over those items. And it was a range of molds. There were green mold and black, which I know there's types of black mold that can have serious health effects, and like gray and some weird like orangey pink mold. So a whole variety of colors and types of mold, in part because there was like standing water in that room. That room was, the back storage room was kind of a low spot in the basement, and so water was pooling, and there was, you know, like cheap plastic carpet back there, but it was soaking wet. Not with like inches of water, but when you stepped on it, it would squish, and you'd see that there was certainly standing water, which made the whole basement a high moisture environment, which is why this bloom was flourishing so much. I hear spiders. There we go. Anyway, and I followed the procedure that, you know, I had kind of accepted. Text his son, ask him to deal with it, wait for a week while he ignored it, text him again, remind him to deal with it, get excuses and promises that he'd deal with it soon, wait another week, text him again, remind him that this is a serious problem that needs to be dealt with. And, you know, after maybe a month of this, he finally came out to the site and to the house, and quote unquote handled it. And the way he handled it was to see, yep, there's mold back there, and yep, there's standing water. And then he proceeded to try and figure out where the water was coming from, which is more than I did. And he figured out that the water heater was leaking. And that was what was feeding this flooding, causing this flooding in the basement. And it was a slow trickle of flooding. It probably was evaporating as fast as the trickle, although it may have gotten worse, you know, while he was ignoring it. So then he proceeded to buy a new water heater and replace the failing one, the leaking one. And then he considered his job done, which meant I was left again where I had been a month prior, concerned about the mold bloom in the basement that was right near the furnace. And the furnace has an intake that, like, should probably be covered, but, you know, it could be just pulling air in from right next to that storage room and spreading it all through the house. We could all be breathing in spores from this black mold, affecting our health. So that's when I got mad and serious. And that, you know, 2 years ago, that's when I started researching Michigan law and how things should be dealt with, and figured out that in serious cases like this, I have two options. One is to, well, three, really. The first would be go to the city. And tell them about the problem and have them contact the landlord and get it dealt with. The second would be to force my landlord to deal with it by telling him in writing that I'm withholding rent and that it needs to be taken care of within 30 days, I think. Actually, with health issues like this, it might be a shorter time frame, like 10 days or something. Or I could hire a mold remediation company myself to come in, and then I could deduct whatever I spend on that from my rent. And in that way, I could hire an expensive company that would do a really good job. And then my landlord would be out that amount when he came to collect rent. And the way I decided to deal with it, I still was trying not to be... Well, I still respected my landlord at that point, I guess is the easy way to say it. And I was still thinking about his best interests. So what I decided to do was, because the son, the quote-unquote property manager, had failed, in my eyes, to deal with my request and you know, the legal need to keep this place safe and secure, I wrote a letter, sent it certified mail to my landlord. There are floating lily pads here. Huh. Interesting. I wrote a letter to my landlord and said, what I expect is for you to hire a professional mold remediation company of your choice to come in and deal with this properly, because your son has not resolved it to my satisfaction. And I expect that to be done quickly, and if it isn't, I will go to the city. And I was hoping the threat of all that would be enough for it to get done and handled correctly and quickly. And what happened was the father asked the son to deal with it, and the son didn't do anything for a week or two. And then when I texted the son, I said, you know, what's the status of the mold remediation? Is it getting taken care of? And he said, oh, I can only go as fast as the subcontractors. I'm waiting on them. And I knew he was just stalling again. And I was pretty sure he hadn't contacted anyone. So I pointedly asked, who is handling the remediation? When did you talk to them? And when are they scheduled to come out? And he couldn't answer any of those three questions. He said, well, I'm really waiting for some calls back or something. I have all this on text record, but I haven't read it in a while. It's been a couple years. And, I can only move as fast as them. And the fact that he couldn't answer any of my straightforward questions made it clear to me that he still hadn't hired anyone. Maybe he had made a call or two and gotten a quote or two, but had not scheduled anything, had not decided on a course of action and set it in motion. So I was really mad. And I told him, I expect you, something along the lines of, I expect you to hire somebody immediately and get it scheduled and tell me when they will be coming out. And when he got back to me a couple days later, it was about a week out at that point. But that means that basically he had wasted 2 months of time. When now I know the law clearly says that sort of thing should be dealt with in either 10 or 30 days. And that whole time he's potentially putting my health at risk, the health of my housemates, my cat, whatever. Anyways, in that same letter that triggered this mold remediation, I also outlined several other things that were wrong with the house that I felt should be dealt with, some of which I had been putting up with for like 12 years at this point. And that now that I had done some research, I knew was against Michigan or local law, and that he was responsible for and could be held. He could face fines or other repercussions for ignoring. And in my letter, I was professional and courteous, and I said, these aren't of, the mold remediation is my primary focus right now. These other things should probably be dealt with, but they're not immediate concerns to me. But when I said that, I was thinking, if you want to take a month or two, I'm getting wet. You can. But my intent was for them to be dealt with. All right, let's boat. My hope was that he would use that as a checklist to deal with. And he'd be resolving other issues in the next month or two. Or the next summer if he wanted to. But basically, again, he did the bare minimum that he thought he could get away with. And I don't know what communications he has with his son. It could be that there are things that he asked his son to do that he assumed his son had done. But again, under the law, it's the landlord's responsibility. And just because he trusts some sort of assistant to do something doesn't mean that legally shifts statutory obligations to them. He has a responsibility to oversee, manage, supervise, whatever. He's where the buck stops. I probably should end this episode soon. Let me check the timestamp. 43 minutes. Okay. Approximately, rounding down. Maybe once the day hits, I'll get out of the boat and do that. Yeah, not getting all the way to that blank spot on my map. So yeah, this entire game of unresponsive landlord, irresponsible property manager really frustrated me, and once I got a voicemail asking me to move out, I realized that they were tired of this whole game, or they were failing at the game of balancing their responsibilities, maximizing their income, and minimizing their labor. And for the last year, I've been alone in this house, in the smallest unit. Mine is a studio apartment, just one great room, and then a kitchen, small kitchen, and then a bathroom. The apartment next to me on the second floor is a one-bedroom apartment. With a kitchen and bathroom. But the big money's the first floor, which is a two-bedroom apartment that's in better shape. It's more airy and bright, and has more space. And there's a hole there. What? Oh, that's just my ore. Whoa. Anyhow, so they've gotten to the point where they feel like they've milked as much as they can from this property. Well, the truth is they got an offer. That's what they've told me. And I think it's from a local investor who, from the research I've done, they set up an LLC to protect themselves personally, and they invest in properties, and they establish a separate LLC for each property they buy. So that it's a way to compartmentalize the investments, so that if you get sued, you don't lose multiple properties. They're each owned and operated by a distinct entity. So it's a way to scale up your investments without scaling up your risk. But then the other thing is they're hands off with the management. After they invest in these properties, they hire a local I'm going to get out here. A local rental management firm. I think it's Oxford Housing. Which is the largest rental management firm in Ann Arbor, according to my research. Whew. Insert catchphrase here.